and welcome to the Exit Velo Podcast. We are back at long last. It's been a while. I think it's been a couple weeks for us now, Ben, but I can tell you, man, it feels great to be back hosting this show tonight. I'm Henry Winkelhake, joined here with colleague and fellow baseball enthusiast, Ben Rossi. Ben, how have you been, man?
I mean, I'm glad to be back, but I mean, I've been even more glad that baseball has been going on the past few weeks. It's been one hell of a season to cover. It's just so bizarre, twists and turns. I just don't know how I'll talk about it through history. And I mean, it's just been playing a role, getting me through these times. I mean, currently in California, I'm surrounded by a lot of wildfires in my area, yet baseball has continued to play on. That's just the power that this game has. A's and Giants still been playing despite all these wildfires in my area, but really glad to be back on the podcast. And it's been one like historic out of this world season.
Yes, absolutely. Very glad to be back in the podcast, especially with all the craziness going on in the world right now. Hope you're staying safe out there on the West Coast with the fires and also with the COVID-19 pandemic still going on. But I'll definitely agree with you. It's been great to have baseball to kind of take your mind off everything and just to enjoy the game that we love so much, even if it is a really weird season that you said it, history, who knows how this is going to be remembered. And it's kind of crazy, man. We're already like pretty much halfway done with the season, right? We're closing in on like the 30 game mark. It feels like it just started yesterday to me. I mean, at least hopefully expanded playoffs. Both of our teams should be sticking around for a while, more games to play. That's the Cubbies for me and the Oakland A's for anybody who forgot who Ben roots for. So yeah, in this crazy season, Ben, what are some storylines that have stuck out to you so far? Maybe teams that have surprised you with the way that they've started.
I mean, a lot has definitely surprised me. I mean, I gotta say, I mean, that definitely like you were saying, the White Sox, the Cubs. So I mean, it's crazy. I mean, both Chicago teams have been taking centerpiece in baseball, and then I know you predicted the Padres early in the season to do really well, and it's like I'd say I am a little shocked with how good the Padres have been doing, and then also my prediction the Colorado Rockies, I mean, are up there too, and they've been up. I know they're cooling off a little bit closer to the 500 mark, but they've been up there and they've been doing well. And then, of course, we've had several disappointments too. Like, I mean, the fact that the defending World Series champion Washington Nationals are tied for last place at this point in the season. I mean, some talk about a World Series hangover, or the fact that like other teams have been fairly, or the fact that the Yankees haven't like solidified first place like we were predicting. So that's been really interesting to see how these different teams have gone about this 60-game season for sure. What do you think about those teams I mentioned?
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see the ones that are making us look smart. The Padres for me and the Rockies for you. It definitely feels great to see those predictions kind of panning out. I'm glad you mentioned the Nationals as well. Definitely a surprisingly slow start for them, but hey, that's what they did last year. But somebody should tell them that they don't have like 4 or 5 months to make up for all the ground this year, that you might stay in the cellar if you're that far behind at this point. But other Nationals news line coming in, Steven Strasburg getting shut down for the year, right? He made like 2 starts for him this season, and one of them was like 2/3 of an inning. What was that, an elbow injury, Ben? Did you see what that was with Strasburg?
Yeah, so it's looking like with Steven Strasburg, I was reading their story. It was, but yes, well, it was like an carpool, like he's getting surgery for carpool is what it is for Steven Strasburg. And I mean, that's just already, I mean, a big blow to the Nationals, especially considering the fact that, I mean, it's not as if they weren't struggling. Like we had our predictions of them being the ace pitching staff going into the season, as if that pitching staff isn't struggling already. I mean, Scherzer hasn't been like the amazing flash that we were expecting him to be. I mean, he hasn't been bad, but hasn't been that. And then like Patrick Corbin's been surprisingly having some struggles after a decent start in his first couple starts. Anibal Sanchez has a really high ERA. So I just think that I just don't know where the Nationals can go now. I mean, with Stevens, with losing one of their other best pitchers, they're already kind of slim in that area.
Well, that was the thing with Washington, is that their pitching had to be so good because we didn't really like what they had on offense, especially losing Anthony Rendon. I mean, Juan Soto has been pretty good for him. You expect that, but outside of Soto, it really hasn't been very much production on offense. I'm a guy who owns Trey Turner on my fantasy team, so I can tell you he's hit for pretty good pop this year, but he's not really been the same Trey Turner that they need him to be, getting on base as much, and hasn't been running. The batting average, I think, is a little bit low for him right now. Vic Robles, another guy I know, has been struggling with Washington. But they just don't have a whole lot of bats now that Rendon is gone. And I think you're seeing that with some of the early season struggles. But outside of Washington, there's been some surprisingly good starts. I think across the league, the bottom feeders haven't been quite as terrible as we thought they'd be. We know both the Marlins and the Orioles were playing right around 500 ball. So that was impressive to see them come out of the gate strong. I think the Tigers were another team that were kind of hovering closer to 500 than we may have thought they would be otherwise. Ben, any big takeaways from those bottom feeders who are playing better than we may have expected them to?
I gotta say, I mean, yeah, the Orioles especially have someone impressed me. It just seems like, I don't know, maybe they're bringing back the newer Orioles team and stuff. Those Orioles, because the Orioles in the past, I mean, have done this before, where like they've been consistently bad, one of the worst teams for several seasons, and they've slowly risen with like offense and their bats. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's anything that substantial happening with them defensively. They rank fairly high in pitching categories, so that still might need some work with them. But yeah, surprisingly, several of the bats through their order have been doing decent. And then Marlins, I would definitely say as well, have been a big shot considering where they were coming from. I mean, their whole time off with that, which maybe could have been an advantage for them to figure their team out.
Yeah, Marlins with the big COVID outbreak on the season so far. Or maybe the Cardinals ended up eclipsing them for the biggest outbreak. I'm not sure. I think it was a comparable amount of time missed for both of those teams. But that's kind of a good segue into just a general COVID conversation around the league. Because I get the impression that things are kind of going better than I thought they would in terms of that. Maybe there's not been as many cases as I thought there may have been. It seems like the league is doing a pretty good job of containing everything, and it seems like players are doing a great job of following the rules and staying safe. Ben, has that been your takeaway from the COVID situation as well?
I would say that, only it's problematic to hear that like the Marlins were out partying, guys, and the Cardinals are out partying. So it makes me think, while the league might be improving on it, and the fact that they've been able to get this far in the season is pretty impressive. I really wasn't 100% sure we would still be talking about a baseball season at this point, but it's still a little bit questionable how there's been slight team outbreaks, because then not to mention we also had the New York Mets just recently had the outbreak, which canceled the highly touted Subway Series over the weekend. So the fact that we're still seeing a few people test positive, in some ways it doesn't surprise me, but it also puts into question maybe some of the players and coaches' integrity. That's hard to say, but of course, I mean, the MLB can't do what the NBA and other leagues are doing with the bubble, because we have a full season to play. But I definitely think what the MLB should do is, for the playoffs, they got to find a bubble location if they want to. If they can make it to the, I think if they can make it to the postseason, get through the rest of the season with maybe only a few more cancellations, then we can do a bubble for the playoffs, and the MLB will be set that way. So that's where I think the MLB should go with that.
I think you make a good point there, because once you get to the postseason, or even the last week or two of the regular season, you don't have this much flexibility in the schedule to where you can't have the St. Louis Cardinals take it was like 10, 15 days off, right? I mean, I think they missed about 2 weeks of baseball, and you're not going to shut down the whole postseason while one team is waiting like that. So I think a bubble could be a good idea for the end of the season, and when you can't really afford to miss any days like that. But you make another good point too. There have been examples of players not following the rules. A notable story coming out of Cleveland with Mike Clevenger and Zach Plesac being optioned down to their alternate site team and put on the restricted list. Zach Plesac, I guess, and Clevenger, they both were in Chicago for the weekend playing the White Sox. They go out for friends. They get deep dish pizza and drinks. They come back. The team, I guess, found out about Plesac and sent him down to the restricted list. They told him not to travel with the team. Mike Clevenger sees all of this happening, doesn't feel like he should mention, hey, I was there too, also with him, flies with the team on their road trip. He's on a plane with all these guys. Then they later find out, hey, Clevenger was there too, and he gets sent down with Plesac. Crazy situation there, and not a good look for either one of those guys, especially Clevenger, and kind of trying to keep it on the low, not tell anybody about it. So hopefully less situations like that moving forward. Ben, do you think we're going to see – there's been some speculation that the Indians may not bring either one of those guys back. Do you think that they're going to pitch again in 2020?
I really don't know. I mean, that's the thing with this season. It just sees with seeing all these opt-outs or like various suspensions for conduct, some questionable, some like, yeah, that's understandable. It's like, I just feel like with COVID, it's like they're missing a lot of teams. If they were to take action against these players, in some ways it sets a good example, because while those players are some notable hopefuls for the Indians, I mean, at the same time they're kind of missing the elephant in the room there, and that's kind of what in some ways you could say the whole MLB season's been missing now, with the fact that they've let them play despite all this COVID going on. Like, the US shouldn't deserve to have any sports going on, but like especially with these guys like not taking protocol seriously, or with like teams having so many positive tests yet being able to continue their season, it's like the league's just missing the big elephant in the room here. It's almost like when we go back to the NFL with like ignoring that whole concussion issue. It's becoming a similar thing, I think, just for this particular season with baseball.
You make a great point there. It's tough kind of to see that equation playing out, the risk of getting these games. And, you know, it is a business at the end of the day, but even with a business, you have to be responsible and you have to consider player safety and the risk of the situation. But I do think for the most part, it seems like most players, most teams are taking this seriously, are being careful. A big part of that Cleveland situation too, Carlos Carrasco, who was diagnosed last year with leukemia, so kind of a compromised immune system. I think heard reports that a lot of the Cleveland players really, were upset about that they would jeopardize Carrasco by going out and not following team protocols. So even more important to keep stuff like that in mind when you have somebody on your team who has a pre-existing condition like that. But I guess kind of moving out of the COVID talk and back into the baseball itself, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of teams that we expected to be good, but maybe not so good as they have been so far. And these are teams that are near and dear to both of our hearts, the A's and the Cubs. So Ben, you are our resident West Coast A's guy. Why don't you break down Oakland's success for us so far and what's made them kind of exceed expectations to this point?
You see, I actually kind of saw them doing it. The thing was, it wasn't that I didn't see the A's doing this well. Like, I saw them doing this well. I just didn't see maybe the Astros having a struggle like this at the beginning, and the A's being able to be in front of the Astros. That part was a little startling, but or a little surprising. But like the thing that I find really amazing and really surprising is the A's have been off to a hell of a start. Obviously, look at their record, but actually, you have not seen the best baseball of us yet. We lead the league in strikeouts. Except for, and we don't have anyone particularly hitting high averages. Like, none of our hitters have been performing like amazingly, but we've just been able to get the edges in games, and that's been a lot of little factors. Because if you look at our numbers without our record, you think, oh, we can't be that good, no better than mediocre. But when you look at how we win games, we've had smaller guys in like the 1 through 9 order contributing. The fact that we have a lot of different guys contributing 1 through 9, like we've had bottom guys in the order getting on base to set up things for some of our power hitters and funny guys. And we have guys like Matt Olson's like barely hitting, but whenever he does hit, almost all his hits are home runs. So like so we're basically being dependent on the long ball. And then the whole thing with good defense wins championships. Well, our pitching, our bullpen, which I was expecting to be our big struggle, is actually our biggest strength now. We have we have one of the lowest ERAs in the league. Our bullpen's been nearly flawless throughout. And I mean, our different starters, we've had some inconsistencies with Sean Manaea, and Frankie Montas recently had a bad start, but like guys like Chris Bassett and the recently called up our rookie Jesus Luzardo he's just been out of this world with their starts. And even when guys' starts haven't been great, our bullpen's been able to pick us up. So it's just been the little things, and us being able to play fundamental defense has given us the edge over teams in games. So that's really what I've seen from the Oakland A's. How about your Cubs? Is it kind of a similar situation there? What's giving you guys the edge with their new manager and everything?
I will say it's been a lot of relying on the long ball, but that's kind of just baseball in 2020. I think that's just the way the game is moving. But another comparison that I would make, something that sounded familiar, was getting some contributions from guys further down in the order you may not expect to be the star stepping up and winning games for you. And for us, that's looked like Ian Happ has been the best hitter on the Cubs so far. And coming in, I would have told you that'll be Chris Bryant or Javi Baez or Anthony Rizzo. Rizzo's been pretty good, but Baez and KB have been pretty awful. But, it's been the unlikely heroes. Your Ian Haps, your Victor Caratini's been pretty good. Jason Kipnis has had an amazing start to the season for us. Nico Horner started off pretty hot. He's since cooled down a little bit. So, the unsung heroes, and you saw that a little bit on the pitching side as well. With Tyler Chatwood and Alec Mills having great starts to the season. What I've been saying is that they've since turned into pumpkins. The Cinderella story seems to have ended there as the clock struck midnight on their fairy tale start to the season. But pitching as a whole has been stronger than I thought it would be for the Cubs coming into the year. We definitely had some question marks in the rotation. Kyle Hendricks and Yu Darvish have looked absolutely amazing. I love me some Yu Darvish and his sub-2 ERA right now, striking everybody in the world out. He throws like 15 different pitches. The guy's a beast. But for the Cubbies, we definitely need to see the core heat up a little bit, get a little more consistent. You see, like last night, with Cubs lost 9-1 to the White Sox. They'll have games every now and then where they just don't bring it every night, and it's not consistently there every day. But I do love what Ross has done with the team so far. I think they look like they're having fun. They look more energetic than they did last year, and it's been great to see. So I'm excited, and they're in a great spot right now. I think it's like 3 games up in the Central, I believe, and Milwaukee already lost today. Cubbies are tied with the White Sox right now. At least they were when we started this broadcast. So maybe they're winning by now, but it's going well, man. And it's been great to watch. I'm excited. But there's been some other surprising teams around the league. The White Sox in particular, one you talked about earlier, right across the city in Chicago. And, Luis Roberts, a young guy for them who's been a beast. And I think that's kind of symptomatic of the youth movement that we've seen continue around the league. It's the young studs, Ben. The young guys are just stepping up and mashing baseballs. And are there any other young studs who've stuck out to you?
Well, a couple of them actually also with the White Sox, because the guys I'm really loving with the White Sox, I mean, Luis Robert for sure, but I'm really liking Eloy Jimenez. I mean, I think that is this technically his first, well, maybe his second full season technically, but like,
yeah, I think last year was his rookie year. Yes,
was his full? I think he played most of the season. But I mean, he already looks like, just seeing him hit those home runs, bash them to like, seeing some of the highlights against the Cubs, hitting them to like, hitting home runs far on like the second deck or like far towards like the back of the first level. I mean, he already looks like a stud power hitter from his swing. I saw, like, I would have never guessed he's that much of a youngster. And then, I mean, we also got Tim Anderson is still hitting consistently. I wasn't sure if like that batting title last season was a fluke. I mean, because I remember I had him on my fantasy team. He was doing well in that batting thing. Then he had some inconsistencies. I wasn't really sure if that was just a one-time thing, because you never know with guys who hit high in batting average these days. But no, Tim Anderson's continued to do pretty well. And yeah, there's you said it, that the White Sox have been a symbol of kind of how the MLB's been evolving with a lot of young studs.
And Tim Anderson very much at the forefront of that let the kids play, the youth bat flip movement, all the fun things in baseball that we love to see. And speaking of youth movements and fun things that we love to see, the big story this week, Fernando Tatis swinging 3-0, 3-0 count, and he hits a grand slam. I think he was up like 7 runs at the time the Padres were against the Rangers. And manager Chris Woodward kind of taking offense to that, saying it violates the one of the unwritten rules of the game. And you saw, I think it was later in the game, maybe the Rangers throwing behind Tatis. Ben, what's your impression of that whole situation? Are you kind of team Woodward or team Tatis there?
Oh, I would say, I mean, definitely leaning with Tatis for sure. I'm already falling in love. I'm not saying I'm totally team Tatis. Like, I mean, I wouldn't take a team with either of them, but like, I'm totally with what Tatis did, and I'm totally for it. I mean, besides the fact that Tatis has been one of the most exciting players to watch this season, like, boy, his swing's just been amazing. It's been one of the best swings I've seen in a while of anyone, honestly, in the league. But I mean, I definitely think that like we need guys like Tatis in this game right now, and it's really important for a guy to be able to show his like swagger, young youth like that. And I think if the MLB really wants any sort of like to regain any sort of popularity, it has to let guys like Tatis show that and like have a new art like bat flipping. I mean, Tatis has been saving this game lately this season. He's what's given fans a lot of hope to watch the game. He's provided the most excitement. So there's no reason why a team should get mad and start to try and ruin it for Tatis the way they have. I mean, are you kind of with that thing about the whole youth thing, it sounds like, that you were talking about?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail right on the head, man. Let the kids play. And people tune in to watch players like Fernando Tatis. People tune in to watch exciting young guys who are flashy and talented. And we tune in to watch home runs, even if it's a 7-run game or a 3-0 count. If you're so mad about it, make a better pitch and don't groove a fastball right down the middle on 3-0, and maybe it won't get hit out of the park. I mean, it's just he's trying to play the game, and he's playing it excitingly, and he had to apologize. Like, he felt the need to apologize for hitting a grand slam, which, I'm not to criticize Tatis there. I think he just didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings worse than he already did with the grand slam. But yeah, man, let the kids play, let them hit grand slams, and certainly don't throw at them for hitting grand slams. I am a bit of a baseball purist in some senses, and that I do feel like the game needs to police itself in certain instances, but this wasn't one of those for me. The whole unwritten rule thing is stupid. If it was really important, something we really needed to keep in mind, it would be a written rule. And even if it were a written rule, then Commissioner Manfred probably wouldn't enforce it like he did with the whole sign stealing thing. I think I probably just stole some versions of people's tweets out there. That wasn't an original thought from me, but I just don't think that you should be throwing at Tatis in that situation. I think it's dumb. Just try and get him out if you're so mad about it. Was basically my takeaway.
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I also just want to mention that, like, the whole 3-0 thing, swinging on 3-0, has that become an unwritten rule all of a sudden? That's like taking away from basic strategy. Because I was actually looking, apparently, so since the pitch tracking era, which started in 2008, last year broke the record for the percentage of guys who were swinging at 3-0. 11.1% of the time guys were swinging at 3-0. And actually, Matt Chapman from my Oakland A's today, I mean, what better pitcher are you going to see in the at-bat than the 3-0 pitch? I mean, maybe that might not be the case in like like in younger years, like I used to always be told to take on 3-0 when I played juniors baseball and stuff because at that time we don't necessarily know if pitchers have it in them to always throw it accurately when they need to or hit their locations. But I mean, MLB players, a lot of them know how to hit their locations, so players should be expecting the best possible pitch, a pitch right down the middle, 3-0. I mean, what's there more to say?
Especially like look at the scouting report, a free swinging guy like Tatis. Yet I could have told you he might take a hack on 3-0. Like he likes to swing the bat, he likes to try and hit home runs, and he's playing his game. And yeah, you can't really be too mad about it. Let's briefly, while we're talking about throwing it, guys, just because we haven't had a show since, we can talk about Joe Kelly and Carlos Correa, right? So Joe Kelly didn't even end up hitting any Astros. He was kind of throwing around. One of them may have gone behind Carlos Correa, but he ends up getting suspended. It was like 5-6 games, maybe.
I think more, yeah. So or something like that. Yeah, I think you're right. 5-7, yeah.
So a pretty harsh suspension, certainly more harsh than any Astros players got for the whole sign stealing scandal. So is that a situation where the game should police itself, Ben? Are you okay with throwing at the Astros because the commissioner didn't do anything?
No, not only do I mean if he didn't hit him and stuff, then I mean he maybe yelled a few stuff. He maybe should have kept his mouth shut there, but I mean I don't think the Astros players in some ways kind of might have instigated a lot of that too and stuff with how they kept going back at him for that. But the thing that I think the game doesn't need to police or I think the way the game that doesn't take away is related to this incident is the fact that like they're not letting guys like Trevor Bauer trying to bring some humor by wearing statements on his shoes, like the whole around his cleats, that whole like free Joe Kelly that he was trying to wear. I mean, you see it in a lot of other leagues, guys can wear all those statements, but I mean, I don't know why the MLB is suppressing players from making those statements and stuff. I feel like that's the only way the game's going to get this swagger and get the youth more into it is if the MLB lets guys do things like what Trevor Bauer was doing with his cleats.
Yeah, if you're a league like Major League Baseball and viewership is declining and the population that you do have that watches games is getting older to where you kind of need to start reaching out to that new generation of fans, what better way than letting the Trevor Bauers of the league wear these messages on their cleats and letting the Fernando Tatises shine in whatever moment they choose and hit all the home runs they can? Because the game has a problem right now to where it's just not very exciting to especially younger audiences. So I think you've got to try and do whatever you can to get viewers, keep the game alive and grow the game. So yeah, I'm all for messages on shoes or whatever. Just make the league fun, make baseball fun, and quit getting in your own way. Major League Baseball would be my thoughts on that. But one more Astros piece there I want to touch on. What'd you think of the whole Ramon Lorianna brawl, man? The pitchers coach for the Astros who was chirping him from the sideline.
It was actually their hitting coach to be exact. But okay. Yeah, I mean, actually, in some ways, MLB might have actually finally gotten it right down. It shocked me. Like I was ready. I was like, Alex. I mean, the fact that Alex Wood got like a 7-game suspension made me say, okay, there's no way Lorianna's getting any less than a 10-game suspension. I mean, this is not good. I mean, I really wasn't that mad at Lorianna for what he did. I mean, he definitely could have contained himself, not charging over, but like he didn't end up, if you look at it closely, he didn't end up throwing any punches, and he was instigated. But I mean, he didn't charge the mound, which he kept his composure to not charge the mound, which is huge. And then, like, he was being instigated when he was walking to the base by the Astros hitting coach Alex Clinton or Cintra. Anyways, he was completely instigating him. So the MLB, I think, took right action to only give Lorianna 4 games and him 20 games. And not to mention, I mean, I think that's the craziest thing too, given that like coaches, like I've said in my articles before, it's supposed to be the ones to set the example. I mean, that's one of the biggest embarrassments I've seen from a team in a while, if you ask me, from a player's conduct on the field, from the standpoint of someone's conduct on the field.
Yeah, and so wild that it would be a coach instigating that. I've never seen anything like that before. And you like look at the slow-mo, like they were reading his lips as Lorianna was going down the line. He's like come and fight me is what he's saying. And props to Lorianna, man. He stood up for himself, and nobody got hurt, so that's awesome too. But yeah, I was happy to see that the coach got a longer suspension than Lorianna, because he totally did instigate it there. But Ben, it's been, the show's gone by fast, man. We're already right at a half hour. Shows how much baseball we had to talk about. But one more topic I want to touch on before we close out for the night. Who is your early pick for MVP? Like I said, we're coming up right around the halfway point of the season, so we're a lot closer to the end of the year than we normally would be at the half point. So our predictions may have a better chance of coming right here.
I gotta say, so for MVP for the National League, I gotta say, to toss up, I mean, Tatis Jr. would seem like a good obvious choice, but one of my picks personally, who I think's been underrated and finally deserves it this season if he keeps hitting like that, is Charlie Blackmon. I mean, he's been consistently been atop the MLB in hits over the years, and in the last 5 years, he's only had his worst batting average was like 280 something the past 5 years. I mean, the fact that he's close to maybe being the first 400 here since Ted Williams, of course, with this season shortened, obviously, if anyone hits 400, it's like, yeah, it's not going to really make history. But the fact that like he had almost as good of a start and was close to a 500 start is something remarkable. And I mean, and I mean, he's also doesn't. It's not like he's just a home run hitter. He's not even much of a home run hitter playing at Coors Field. So Charlie Blackmon, something special. Obviously, like I said before, Tatis, one of the most exciting players. In the AL MVP, I definitely think it's a toss-up between Trout and Shane Bieber. I mean, boy, has Shane Bieber's stuff looked wicked for the Indians. I mean, and then Trout, I mean, he still has somewhat high strikeout numbers, but overall, I still think he's looked to be improving. He still overall has good plate discipline. So this could be another MVP season for him too. Who knows? I think it's definitely between those two.
Yeah, never a bad idea to take Trout. That's usually a pretty safe bet. And he's Daddy Trout now, he had a son, I believe, a couple weeks ago. Missed a little bit of time, but doesn't matter. Even in a shortened season, come back, start mashing home runs. So Trout has been a beast so far. I love that you mentioned Shane Bieber, because I got a soft spot for pitchers, man. That was the position I played growing up. So I think it would be awesome to see a pitcher get the MVP. But to do it, you got to have a pretty dominant season. But Shane Bieber has. I think he's got like 5 wins already. It's like 60-something strikeouts. He has been a beast. And he's going to have to carry even more of that load, like we talked about with Mike Clevenger and Zach Plesac down for the Indians. But yeah, I think in the NL, I would probably lean Tatis right now. I think he's like tied for the league lead in steals, leading the league in home runs. Batting average is up around 300. He plays great defense. He does it all. But I think that Blackmon certainly is having a great season as well. So I can't fault you at all for going with Charlie there. Anytime a guy is batting around 400, certainly deserving to be in that conversation. And like you said, maybe the full season batting average doesn't weigh as much in the shortened season, but if he can add that MVP hardware, I think that would certainly be something that he would still like to have. So I'm going to go, I would guess Tatis in the NL, and I think I would agree with you, and I would go Trout in the AL right now. But yeah, we only got like 30-something games left, right? Another 4-5 weeks, I'm guessing, on that front. But the playoffs are going to be here before we know it, and it is an expanded playoffs this year, so more teams making it in. It'll be more excitement, and certainly even more to cover in terms of playoff races as we get down into that stretch run. So we're not going to wait so long to be back with our next show. We're hoping maybe just a couple of days. And exciting news, Adam Cohen is going to be joining us again. Adam has been away for a little while doing an internship. He actually had a chance to call some baseball games out in Illinois. I think it was like and it was like a semi-pro league or something.
I think it's summer collegiate baseball league where he is. Yeah. Or you got collegiate summer league for collegiate players. Yeah.
That's what it is. So certainly an awesome opportunity for our colleague, Adam Cohen. We're looking forward to having him back here with us so he can announce to you, our wonderful viewers. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Ben, any last words before we sign off?
just want to say it's going to be one amazing ending to the baseball season next few weeks. It's going to be one ride, so buckle up. And this time I also want to just send my prayers out to anyone affected by not only COVID, but by but what's happening in California right now. And everyone out there, please stay safe. And a huge thank you to our firefighters who have been battling this fire like they've never had to battle any fire before. So thank you to that.
Well said, my friend. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. And we will see you next time on the Exit Velo podcast presented by Back Sports Page.